Welcome to King of the What Now, a podcast that talks about whatever we want. We hope you enjoy the show, or else.
Podcast.
Hello, fellow tsunderes who have fallen in love with the main character but are too shy to express their feelings. Before we get to the episode proper, I just want to give a little disclaimer. I finished watching these series shortly after Mikadono and Watanare's first seasons finished, and then it took me a second to write the script, and then it took me even longer to record, and then it took me time to edit. And by the time I was ready to release it, I realized, oh, Valentine's Day is coming up. So this episode's been a little bit delayed, and if I make a reference to, that thing that happened last week, that was probably actually several months ago. I just didn't want to go through and re-record every single time I mentioned, specifically, like, I just finished. At the time of the recording, I had not seen the next several episodes of Watanare, the Shine arc, I think it's called, so I do not reflect my thoughts about those in here at all. That's it. Back to the show. Hello, fellow high school students falling inexorably towards your first major love. And welcome to King of the What Now, Harem Anime Review Edition? I don't exactly know if this counts as King of the What Now, but, whatever. We're here. I'm here. It's your host, Joel. And also, I am using my knowledge of anime in order to figure out what women in the real world might need in order to fall in love. The essential parts, right? So there is, you need a mentor figure who knows more about the topic than you do. You need to be able to surpass your limits, no matter what. I guess this is more shonen anime than anything else. But trust me, any day now, my, specific interests will align in such a way that I can translate that information into real world romantic feelings. So today I'm going to be talking about 5 seasons of anime spread across 3 different series. And although I'm going to kind of necessarily be comparing them because I'm talking about them in the same video, that does not mean that I am trying to state that one is better than the other, right? I don't have definitive rankings. Well, I might have a personal preference for which one I like better than the other, but I'd say that quality-wise, they're all equal. I think they're all worth your time, maybe depending on your own preferences, right? So what 3 anime am I talking about? We have There's No Freaking Way I'll Be Your Lover Unless. We have Dealing with the Mikadono Sisters is a Breeze, and we have The World God Only Knows. Now you will immediately notice that one of these things is not like the other. There's No Freaking Way I'll Be Your Lover and Mikadono Sisters, those are both seasonal anime that wrapped up relatively recently. I didn't put out my review the day after I finished watching them, but it was recent, right? In the last month or two. And then The World God Only Knows, its first season was in 2010, it went for 3 seasons, and it finished, I think, in 2013. And so there's a bit of a difference here. But I ended up watching all 3 at about the same time, and I just thought maybe it might be fun to give my thoughts about these. Apologies if you have burning questions for what Kat thought about these shows. She only saw certain highlights, I believe mostly from Mikadono, and maybe a couple from There's No Freaking Way I'll Be Your Lover Unless. So I'll focus on each one at a time. At first, I will tell you kind of what the general idea of the series is. I will tell you what I liked about it, what recommends it to me, and I will tell you about who the best girl is for that season. And then, after I've done all 3 of them, I have a little bit, I'll wrap up at the end of the video. If you're only interested in one of those shows and you're on YouTube, actually, if you're in any kind of podcatcher of choice, there will also be timestamps in the description that you can use to jump wherever you want. So the first one I want to talk about is There's No Freaking Way I'll Be Your Lover Unless, aka Watanare, aka Disaster Lesbian, aka There's No Way I'm a Lesbian Unless, aka If Only She Had 4 Hands, aka Pulling the Popular Girls is a Breeze, aka The World Lesbian Introverts Only Know. So what's this about? This is a Yuri harem anime. The main character, Renako, I think is how you pronounce it. I'm so sorry, I'm not very good with a lot of Japanese names, but she was she was an introvert. She was in danger of becoming a shut-in, a NEET, and she decided that she wanted to make some changes in her life. So she moved schools where people wouldn't know about her reputation of being socially introverted, and she decides to try to be an extrovert. And she so happens to fall in with the 4 most popular girls at school, and it just so happens that she manages to have all of them catch feelings for her. Asterisk. It does seem like a harem anime, and these 5 girls are all hanging out all the time, but one of the girls doesn't really get a lot of screen time in this first season, but I assume that she will eventually catch feelings for the main character, because the other 3 certainly have. Who are these other girls attending school? The first one that we really meet and have spent a lot of time with is Mai. I did not write down her last name, but once you watch the show, it's Mai. She is a kind of world-famous model. She's very beautiful, very confident, and she realizes, like, Renako is trying to keep the fact that she's an introvert a secret, and that leads to some hijinks. And Mai has this air of being confident and perfect all the time, but deep down, she's actually insecure, and she has her own flaws and her own misgivings. But Renako is like, hey girl, I think you're great just the way you are. And Mai goes, oh my god, I love you forever, I want to get intimate with you, and there's no way that you will ever say no to me because I'm perfect. And Renako doesn't want to be in a relationship. It would ruin the 5-person group that she's in. It might cause tension if there was a breakup or something like that. So she goes, no, we're going to be best friends. And eventually that just becomes, they're kind of dating, but they're kind of not dating. Mai keeps trying to say, dating me would be great, and Renako keeps saying being my best friend will be kind of great. This goes back and forth. Eventually, the second girl in the group, Satsuki, she kind of figures it out, I think. Gosh, I wish that I had written down my notes as I was watching these episodes. I didn't even realize I wanted to do a review until very close to the end of the season, when I realized, I'm watching 3 different shows that are all similar in theme in a certain sense, or genre, I guess, more than theme. But Satsuki basically decides that she wants to try dating Renako as well. And Renako is kind of like, well, I guess I have no other choice. Sure, why not? And she kind of gets pulled along, and Satsuki is a lot more reserved. Not introverted, but just kind of like quiet. She's a little bit more... she's less... How do I say it? She's less of a social butterfly, but she works very hard to get top academic marks, but can't beat Mai, because Mai is perfect at everything except for consent. We'll get back to that in a second. But they sort of date for a little while, and things go well. Eventually, there is a video game tournament, I'm not kidding, between Satsuki, Renako, and Mai, and the winner gets to date Renako forever. And I think Satsuki wins, which is very interesting because they don't treat it like the victory that it was supposed to be. I think they had too many heartfelt moments, and they kind of called off the prize, so to speak. The third character is Ajisai, and she simply is the best. She clearly is in love with Renako from the very beginning, and Renako is very clearly in love with her, or, they use the word love in these kinds of anime, but they have strong feelings for each other and they want to date. But her flaw is that she doesn't really kind of stick up for herself. She tries to be selfless all the time, and that ends up causing kind of a quiet stress that she doesn't really acknowledge. She's great. And her arc is near the very end of the season. They go on a sort of impromptu trip. Ajisai runs away from home, and Renako tags along. So really, it just ends up becoming this sort of vacation that they're on together that has, pretty strong romantic overturns. Mai shows up briefly, and she and Ajisai have a moment together where Mai basically tells her, you need to kind of go for it. You can't just, keep being selfless, because otherwise you're going to lose to the other 2 baddies that are currently polling for Renako. The fourth girl is Kaho, who does not get as much screen time in this first season. She seems like just an absolute delight of a goblin character, and strong implications that both she and Satsuki, it's outright stated for Satsuki, it's pretty strongly implied, if not outright stated, about Kaho, but they're both in love with Mai, which is a very interesting kind of dynamic happening here. So that's the series as a whole. And one thing that I will say that I like is that I like that this show is honest about what being in a relationship or starting to explore romantic feelings at this age would look like. When you first start, developing romantic feelings and relationships and start dating people and kissing gets involved and all that stuff, a lot of people get pretty excited. They get pretty overwhelmed and like, oh my gosh, I really like this. Mai makes no attempt to hide the fact that she wants to go all the way with Renako. She wants to marry Renako, and she's ready to do that tomorrow. And so I kind of offhandedly mentioned, that Mai's good at everything except for consent. There's a moment when they are at Renako's home, and Mai's like, I'm going to start kissing you. I'm going to start unbuttoning your shirt, and they get caught. Now, something I left out of the summary is that this relationship is supposed to be a secret, but Renako and Mai get caught by Renako's sister, and Renako gets really mad, and there's some actual drama. And I think that that is a realistic thing that could or has happened to people of that age. It makes perfect sense for the way that Mai's character is, but it's also the reason why I don't really like Mai. In the very first episode, she goes, hey, I have these vulnerabilities, and you're the only person who can know about these vulnerabilities. And Renako goes, cool, I want to be your friend. But I personally don't feel that we really get a lot more of Mai's insecurities. We get a lot more focus on, like, Satsuki wishing that she could kind of take the queen down a notch, I guess, if that makes sense. She's kind of competitive with Mai. She wants to prove that she can defeat Mai. But Mai is mostly just Mai. She doesn't really take no for an answer, not just in the scene that I mentioned, but like Renako will be like, hey, we should switch off every other day. One day we'll be dating, we'll be acting like we're dating, and then the next day we'll be acting like we're friends. But Mai will just constantly stay in dating mode. And that kind of frustrates me, and I feel like maybe Renako needs to learn how to stand up for herself a little bit, and I feel like she is doing that more and more over time. But again, the various character traits that Mai displays do not endear me to her. It frustrates me a little bit as a viewer. One thing that is cute is the fact that she will often be portrayed in that chibi anime style with like dog ears and a tail, and she's just very excited. And that's cute. That is a very good design choice. And then, Ajisai, like I said, she's kind of the best character, just like straight up. I don't quite understand how the story is going to try and make me think that all four of these girls are equally interested or equally possible of taking her hand, or that Renako might, have a hard time choosing. Because literally in one episode, she's thinking to herself like, oh, Ajisai is like a perfect angel, and if only we could hold hands. And it's like, babe, you are a lesbian. That is your crush. Just go for it. Overall, it's a fairly cozy show, I would say. And I also like the fact that these four other girls all have interactions with each other. Kaho, she seems to be kind of like the president of the Mai fan club. And that's why I think that it's pretty much stated that she wants to date Mai, wants to kiss Mai, that sort of a thing. It's straight up said that Satsuki is in love with Mai. Mai, being the character that she is, takes advantage of that in a scene. No non-con here, but like there's a moment of emotional turmoil because Mai knows about those feelings and kind of takes advantage of them because she's feeling bad about herself. And then Ajisai is kind of there. She's well liked by pretty much everyone, and she, as far as I know, has been friends with everyone for a pretty long time. And so there's this history that you can kind of get teased out as Renako continues to learn more about the different characters. If I could script doctor this show or give a couple of things that I think could be strengthened, and this one is hard because I think that mental illness is just very difficult to portray. There will be characters in shows that have the same mental hangups and same kind of issues that I have, and I still won't always empathize with them because it's really hard to show a character going through something without it seeming either super melodramatic, like I stubbed my toe and it's the end of the world, even though there are people who are, that level of anxious, or you say, I'm feeling anxious right now, but the character on screen seems to not reflect that. They seem to be acting completely normal. And so I would say that it's interesting that Renako was this introvert for years and years and years, and now she just kind of is able to handle all of this. Like, she meets the 4 most popular girls at school. It certainly seems that way. They all, love hanging out with her, and there's all of that. On the other hand, that could just be a me problem. It could be the fact that it's hard to portray a character with mental illness, and of course, introverts are not necessarily socially awkward or anxious. They're just people who lose energy pretty quickly in those sorts of situations. I would say that the show does a pretty good job of having her be the sort of person who always second guesses what she said. Oh, is that a stupid thing that I say? And she's really nervous about the fact that she likes games that are not very girly. So first off, she plays games which she's like, no girl will respect another girl who plays games. And then secondly, the types of games she plays are things that she thinks will put off other people, which is not the case. But at the same time, when you're insecure, it doesn't really matter if people tell you, no, they want to be your friends. They want to be around you. They do actually enjoy this game. Renako, she doesn't get that. And that's how social anxiety and kind of doubt manifest, right? So that makes sense. And then the other thing that I kind of wonder about is the show sort of starts in media res with her having already made the friends that she has. And potentially that was a decision on behalf of the writer, A, to get the story started faster, and then B, we can have later episodes or chapters, because this is based off of a manga or a light novel or maybe both. So you can have later parts of the story where you flash back to an interaction they had before. But I just am really curious how Renako met these people and how well she kind of blended into the group. Did she, the first time she show up, basically say nothing and they all just glomped onto her, which would be a little strange, but that's one possibility. Or was there did she say something? Did she basically try her best to be friendly and conversational, and it worked out great, and that's why the other 4 girls like to hang out with her? But she thinks that she said something stupid, and so she's like, why would they want to be my friend after I said that thing? Renako, you're fine. You said something fine. Everyone liked what you said. There's one more thing about this show. If you watched it, you might be aware of what it is, something that I really liked about it that I'm not going to mention just yet, because I'm going to wait a little bit longer to bring that up in a later section of the video. But before I move on, let's talk about who is best girl. And if you could not tell from the way that I described her, the best girl is clearly Aji-san. Aji-sai. I think she's called Aji-san by Renako, but she's great. I love her. There's nothing wrong with her in my opinion. There's not wrong with her, but her character flaws are not really flaws that are, a turnoff for me or anything like that. I think that she's a great character so far. It does seem like, because they've already announced that there's going to be a second season, and I think Aji-sai and maybe it's Aji-sai and Mai, or maybe it's Mai and Satsuki, but basically it seems like the next arc is going to be kind of 2 of them competing for Renako's affections. And so maybe as the story goes on, maybe as Aji-sai has to assert herself, or as the other characters assert themselves, maybe she'll show more flaws or more instances of situations where I don't agree with her decisions. But so far, she's great. Also, the fact that she has the bisexual flag colors in the flowers in her hair, cool. I love it when the showrunners are just like, hey, I'm not even going to try to be subtle about this. Friends, I apologize if this is awkwardly transitioned into. I realized there was a section I wanted to cover at the end of each of my reviews, and I didn't I didn't remember to do it for Watanare, so I'm going to take the section where I'm talking about that, I'm going to put it right here. Hopefully it was seamless, but if it wasn't seamless, now you know why. And if it was seamless, but I explained why it wasn't seamless, that's even better, right? We all need that information. Something that I'm interested in is, what is the work trying to say? Right? If you don't watch all of our content, I talked in one of our Cure of the What Now episodes about how every story that is told has some kind of a point, I think. I know that there's some authors who will say that that's not true, that some stories are just meant to be fun, but even that is itself a statement, right? You want people to have fun. And I do think that, for 99 out of 100 stories, you'll be able to pick out kind of like themes and motifs and things that speak to what the story is about. So what is Watanare about? Watanare explores the idea of what differentiates a strong friendship, if that makes sense, like a best friend, not just like an acquaintance or something. A strong friendship and a romantic relationship. And Mai and Reniko early in the season, they talk about this, right? Where Mai goes, well, what do you consider? What are you looking for in a best friend? And Reniko's like, oh, it'd be someone that I spend all of my time with, and it would be someone that I miss when they're not around, and it would be someone who I can tell all my secrets to, and it is someone that I can rely on when I'm sad or I need help. And Mai's like, those things are also what you look for in a romantic, or that's what I look for in a romantic partner. That's even symbolized in the opening, because there is a heart that is partially pink, partially blue, and it has arrows kind of like, it's flipping between the two colors. And that is the choice that Reniko is trying to make is, does she want a friend or does she want a relationship? The thing I will say to this is that this example, or this, they're actually quite similar if you think about it, only really works if you don't consider the physical intimacy of the situation. Now, there are aromantic or asexual people who, for them, perhaps a relationship with a significant other would look like a strong friendship to someone else, or a different person's relationship in that sense. I'm trying not to paint in too broad of a brush, right? But I'm saying it is possible for some situations for the partners of someone you're going to marry to look like just a strong friendship. But this show, Reniko and Mai are not... they're interested in physical intimacy. They want to kiss and do other things that I personally do not do with my close friends. Now, I am not a high school girl in an anime, so maybe that's different, right? Maybe if you're a high school girl in an anime, you kiss the homies goodnight on the lips and do other intimate stuff. At the same time, I do think it is interesting because early in a relationship with someone you want to date, right? You want to get to know them better. You want to try to present your best self, and you want to see if you're compatible. And when you are making a good friend, when you're befriending someone and, you two just click, well, there you go. It's kind of the same. There's a sense of chemistry there, even if it's not necessarily always the same exact sensation. And you do want to present your best self and all this other stuff. So in many ways, those two relationships can be very similar. I just don't think that it is always, it's not so close that you wouldn't be able to tell them apart, right? I have a different relationship with my wife than I do with my best friend, and I think that's probably true about most people as well. But again, maybe this show is dealing with the initial part of a relationship, which can be, the lines can be slightly blurrier, especially if intimacy is not going to happen for X, Y, or Z reason. But that will do it for now for Watanare, and for the rest of this video I will continue to call it Watanare because I don't understand this concept of having entire sentences as your show title. It wasn't called House, the doctor who's really smart and is also a jerk. It was just called House, possibly House MD. Anyways, moving on to the second anime that I want to talk about tonight, we are going to be talking about Dealing with the Mikadono Sisters is a Breeze, aka What If Danganronpa and Quintessential Quintuplets Had a Baby, aka Protect You at All Costs, Y-U-U, not Y-O-U, aka Someone Beat Up That Dad, aka There's No Way I'll Fall for That Talentless Loser, unless. aka the world the talented only know. What's the deal with this show? I already mentioned Danganronpa and Quintessential Quintuplets, but this show is Quintessential Quintuplets putting a finger underneath its nose and trying to pretend that it's someone else. Instead of 5 girls, it's 3 girls. Instead of 5 quintuplets, it is 3 sisters of different ages. So I think it's a first year, a second year, and a third year in high school. Instead of the main character being in this position because he's a tutor, the main character is in this position because he doesn't have anywhere to live because his mom passed away, but he ends up living with these girls, and he ends up in a sort of not a sort of managerial position. He ends up basically becoming their manager, which is yet another situation where he kind of has some level of control over their lives, and the relationship between him and the girls can be influenced or kind of pushed in one direction based off of them needing his help or him wanting to assert himself. So that's very similar to the main character from Quince, whose name I don't remember at the moment. And then the other thing that's similar about those two is if you watch Quince, there is a plot point about a photograph that the main character has that he keeps in his Futaro, wasn't that his name? Anyways, he had a picture that he keeps in his wallet about this girl that he fell in love with when he was very young, and then that ends up being relevant to the Quintessential Quintuplets. But in Mikadono, there is a photo of the 3 sisters being in a photo shoot together when they were young, and that is a photo that is relevant to today, and there's a little bit of a mystery as to who was looking at the photo in present day, because it was just hanging out on the table, and you was like, whose photo is this? And the girls all pretend that it wasn't them. At the same time, it's not a photo from the main character's past, and it is not a photo that ends up being super relevant to who the main character ends up marrying or dating or falling in love with at the end of the series. So I think that I think you understand now why I am drawing comparisons between Quintessential Quintuplets and dealing with the Mikadono Sisters is a breeze. But why did I mention the Danganronpa thing? Because in this universe, in this anime, there are basically people with talents, people with ultimate talents. Yu's mom is like basically the most famous actress in the world, it seems like. And she had a friend who's about the same age as her, I think, or like maybe a, what do you call it? A kohai, a lower classman. You don't really say that word very often, do you? Underclassman, I think. But anyways, he is indicated to maybe have an ultimate talent as well, and the 3 love interests, the 3 girls, are also ultimates in different ways. One is, there's 3 sections to the school, and one is the top athlete, and one's the top like academic performer, and one is the top creative arts person. So, ultimate talents from Danganronpa, but instead of what happens in Danganronpa, instead of death games, you just have cute anime. The main character, Yu, does not have an ultimate talent, which is a ongoing joke throughout the series, that people always assume that he probably does have like some incredible ability because his mom is so famous, and then they meet him and they're like, oh, he's kind of a schlub. But, you know, he tries his best. He has a little bit of an inferiority complex, and I assume that that's something that he's going to tackle and overcome throughout the series. And now, so what's the plot? Yu's mom passes away, unfortunately, and his dad is out of the picture. And so someone that knew his mom really well is like, hey, you can come live at my place. And so Yu goes and he lives there, and he ends up living with the 3 girls that I mentioned, right? So you have the oldest, Kazuki. She is an upcoming actress. You have, I think Nico is the middle one. But you have the martial arts kind of fiery tempered one, who is the best martial artist in the world. Not the world, but in her age bracket. And then the youngest is Miwa, who is a high-ranking shogi player who can outperform even men at her age. And so those are the 3 main characters, and that's
I mean, that's really it, right? The overall story of the first season is that the three girls are not very close to each other. They're very absorbed in their own journeys to become the best at what they do. Their dad is incredibly like, the only thing I love is results, so you better be bleeding out of your mouth because that's how hard you've been doing push-ups, Nico. If you're not, you're no daughter of mine. And I'm sure there's going to be some tragic backstory where his wife was an ultimate or wanted to be an ultimate but couldn't live up to it or something. Right now, he's just an asshole. Right now, he has absolutely nothing going for him. He makes fun of you because you took the girls to like a fun like evening at like a festival kind of a thing. And the dad was like, how dare you? But they ended up doing better at their respective like tournaments and stuff because they had the time to relax. So the dad was just wrong and he was a jerk about it for no goddamn reason. But there isn't really an arc to these episodes. Each girl gets a time in the spotlight, a couple of episodes that are mostly about them. So Kazuki always plays male roles, and she decides that, or she's told by her dad that she should try to be in a traditionally feminine role, and she doesn't know how to act like a feminine woman. And so she ends up going on a mock date with you to try to get quote-unquote practice. If you've read any fan fictions, you know that this is a flimsy premise because she just wants to go on a date with him. At this point, they've all fallen in love with him, and so she uses this as an excuse, but it also gives her a chance to learn a little bit more about herself. Then Nico gets her time in the spotlight where she was friends with another ultimate martial artist when they were kids, and pretty clearly indicated that she has a crush on him. And he comes back to school and he basically says, you should come to my school. But Yu thinks that that's not what she wants, and it isn't, because she wants to stay with her sisters, who she's growing close to, and also she has a crush on Yu. And so Yu basically sets up this scenario where Nico will fight her childhood friend, and if she wins, she gets to stay at the school. And so they have a couple of episodes together where Yu's kind of like helping her train and they're spending time together and it's more cute flirtation stuff. And then Miwa's story is at the very end of the of the season. And her deal is that she's basically undefeated in shogi. I don't think she's lost a single competitive match ever. There's another girl who is also a talentless, no good, gray person who's never going to amount to anything. But she believes that even average people, if they make an effort, can reach an ultimate level, which is unheard of. You're either born with it or you're not. But she ends up beating Miwa in their first of 5 shogi competitions. So Miwa has a couple of episodes, a whole arc, also with the rival character, the self-proclaimed rival character, as Miwa tries to reclaim her title, and Yu ends up helping her get her groove back. And that's kind of where the season ends. I think there's a final episode that is just kind of like, here we go again, of like you giving them all food that is like perfectly tailored to their tastes. And they're like, oh my gosh, he gave me a protein shake that tastes so delicious that I think I like him, and that kind of a thing. It's more complicated than that. There's a little bit of depth, There's depth to the girls and their flaws and what they are kind of missing. And it makes sense that Yu is able to help them without necessarily being an expert in martial arts or anything like that. I apologize if you can hear my cat snacking on kibbles. I'm really hoping that you can't hear it. I do not have time to wait for him to finish and then record later. So that's just going to be there if it's there. So what do I like about this series? I like how cute Yu is. Of the 3 main characters, I definitely think that Yu is my favorite, and he is a cinnamon bun who must be protected. If you ever watch this show and you only watch one episode for some reason, it's one of the Nico episodes when she's training. It's a little montage of all of the different ways that Yu is trying to help her. Like, he looks awkward as he does like the warm-ups, and he looks like a dork as he's cheering her on. And they're just cute. It's in the chibi art style. I really like Yu. And then I also like that he is supposed to be talentless. I think that this show is a little bit, not this show, this universe is too binary about you either have it or you don't, because he tried to be an actor like his mom, and he failed, and nobody ever gave him recruitments. They never got him to be in shows. They never gave him a role, but he has moments where he says things the way that an actor would say them, where the camera angle changes a little bit and the lighting changes and he says it in a slightly different voice. And like, it's the most titillated I have been in all three of these shows. Is I can feel why this would have an impact on the girls and why they would have a moment of like, oh, he's not just like this little talentless run. Like he's got some riz, that kind of a thing. I also really like most of the girls. I think every show there's one character that I just don't like. Even if they're a main character, even if they have a moment in the spotlight, even if they have like these great arcs and moments, I still am like, you're my least favorite. But I really do like Kazuki. I really do like Nico. The scene with Nico actually winning her martial arts tournament, it's kind of silly. I don't really quite understand how it translates, but basically she decides that she's allowed to be feminine. She doesn't have the curves of a traditional feminine woman, and she doesn't wear lipstick and makeup and nail polish, because she was told that it doesn't suit her and because that's not what martial artists do. And in this episode, she decides like, no, I can like girly things. I can wear dresses and stuff. And I don't quite understand how that translates into a fighting style. I guess she does. She mixes up her techniques. Like the guy is like, she always fights textbook fighting style. But right now she's throwing feints and she's doing tricky martial arts stuff. So it's about not confining herself to a box. But they also do these really cool visuals of like she jumps in the air and they overlay what it would look like if she was wearing like a sundress as she was doing this jump or whatever. And I don't know, that really worked for me. I think that might be my favorite scene of all of these shows put together. I really liked it. I like the way that the girls are flustered by Yu's reaction. There will be scenes where he's talking to one of the characters and the other two girls will be eavesdropping. Just the way that they blush at something that Yu says, because Yu will say something like, I want to be with you forever. And everyone is embarrassed, except what Yu meant is he wants to live in the same house as them forever. Or at least that's what he means now. Later, he'll probably develop feelings and decide he means it in a different way. But the way that they all react, perfect. I love the way that the show tells you that these three aren't very close to each other. Not only does it tell you, but it shows you that they don't really have time for each other. But as the season continues, there are things where Kazuki and Nico are watching Miwa's championship match in the shogi match during her arc. Or when Nico's doing her martial arts thing, the other two run from the things that they were doing in order to be there on time in order to see her win. So the show is showing that they are three sisters who weren't really being a family, and now they are being a family, and it's because of Yu. And that's explicitly part of the themes, so we'll talk about that in a little bit when I talk about like what's the show trying to say or what's the message that you can take away from it. But I think it's really well executed in that sense. The other thing I really like, they tell you that Yu is kind of talentless or whatever. And what I appreciate is that the show didn't just tell you that in episode 1 and then forget about it. There will be moments where he has like a really cute moment with, I'm specifically thinking of the date with Kazuki at the very end. He tries to do something cool. I can't remember specifically what it is, but he almost does it perfectly, like a really romantic date, but then he messes something up. And he goes, oh no, I'm terribly average. And I just feel like the show is committing to the fact that Yu is still someone who is clumsy and makes mistakes and whatever. It can feel a little incongruous, because there will be scenes where he's able to make like what feels like a 5-course meal that perfectly has beauty vitamins and nutrients for good skin for Kazuki, and it has protein for muscle building for Nico, and it has sugar to engage the brain of Miwa, and yet he can't like clean the dishes without dropping them. So it can feel a little bit like there's two yous. There's the you on screen, then there's the you behind the scenes, and one of them's really competent and one of them messes up. Kind of like a character who is really incompetent in a cutscene in a video game, but then when you play as them, they're really good. But it doesn't detract from the series as a whole. I also feel like this might have been the series that made me laugh the most, but that's really difficult to track. Human memory is not very good. So I'm sure that I laughed at the other two as well. I just can't remember which series made me laugh the most, but this is a funny series. I really liked it. So really quick, best girl. This shouldn't be a surprise if you know who like my favorite characters are from different series, especially when I'm picking like best girl from a show with a wide ensemble of female characters. You will know that I like really fiery characters. So Nico is my favorite, just hands down. I also really like her arc the best, I think. Miwa's ends up being that she likes being praised, which is perfectly adequate. The whole point of her arc is that you don't necessarily need a lofty reason to do something, just so long as you have a reason to do it. And so her reason is that she just wants people to tell her that they're proud of her. At the same time, that doesn't feel very strong to me. So yeah, I wasn't necessarily a fan of that. And Kazuki's kind of funny because she says that she wants to learn to be more feminine, but then I'm pretty sure that after that episode where you see her acting as like a queen or a princess or someone in a dress on screen, I'm pretty sure the next couple of times we see her, she's back to playing like male prince roles, which I found a little strange. But Nico is awesome. I really like Nico. The rival character for Miwa, she's in the opening like she's a fourth romantic interest. I have no idea if that's what role she's going to fulfill later in the series or does fulfill later in the manga. But I also like her as a comic relief character, and I also really like her as being another talentless klutz like you. They end up in a lot of those like, oh no, I've fallen over and now his hand is on my boob. I don't like that trope, but I like how over the top silly these two are. Like one of them will trip and the other one will be like, oh, I'll catch you, but then he'll end up tripping too. It's always him who tries to catch her and then they both fall over. And so I think that's an interesting way of showing that they have not necessarily chemistry, but synchronicity, I think you would say. So yeah, I really like all of the characters in the show. Even the dad, who you're supposed to dislike, I do dislike him. They did a good job of making him be an asshole that you just want to kind of smack around. Now, what is the message of this show that they're trying to get across? And I think there's two. I think one of them is this talentless kind of thing that they're going with. It's not really directly confronted. You still ends up kind of being you. The show goes out of its way to say, like, he messes up a lot, and you don't really see anyone comment on how he's not messing up as much lately, or you don't really see him thinking to himself about, like, oh, maybe I shouldn't look down on myself for being talentless, because he's pretty... not self-deprecating, but he thinks that he's stuck where he is. He seems pretty comfortable despite the fact that it brings him unhappiness. At the same time, that rival character, whose name I forgot to look up, her whole thing is that talentless people can achieve things. Oh, it's Rock Lee and Gaara from Naruto. And so I think that her words and her presence in the show, if she continues to be around, will be something that is something of a catalyst for you. And then the other main thing is kind of like what it means to be a family. And this is explicitly the message, because the whole thing that Yu does when he moves in with these girls is his mom's dying wish, or one of the last conversations he had with her as she was dying, was that she always wanted a family. And he doesn't know what that means. He used to wonder what family could mean, but he wants to work towards that goal even if he doesn't know what it means. That's how he gets them to fall for him, is because of all of the effort that he's putting into making sure that they're all acting like a family, and his passionate speeches or whatever are having an effect on him. So that's really cute. There is one thing that I will say, if I could kind of script doctor the show, it sometimes feels like Yu has no interest in romance, and it's perfectly all right. Like, if you want a main character who's ace or something like that, or they're slow on development, if you know what I mean, like a late bloomer, right? I'm not saying slow in the head. I'm saying like maybe they're not as interested in that sort of thing as other people their age. And I think Kazuki is a year older, so I think it makes a special sense that she would maybe clue in on these things or be more interested in these things than he is. But there's like a couple of times when like Kazuki tells him that like that accidental kiss was my first kiss, and he kind of has like this like, oh, reaction, but it ends up not really, it feels like he doesn't have any interest. And it's okay for your character to not have interest, except this is a harem romance show that clearly is trying to say that these girls are into him. So I wish that there was more of him being interested or having moments or missing them when they're not around. And I wish that there was a hint to us, like Renako from Watanare, clearly is into girls, but kind of seems to think that she's not, or kind of thinks that she's not interested in dating, but clearly she is. I wish there was a little bit more of that from you, a little bit of he thinks that he just wants to be good family members, but actually it turns out that maybe there's something else that his heart wants. He's just not, he hasn't caught up to it yet in his rational thinking brain. And now it's time for The World God Only Knows. I do have to admit a bit of a bias. If I were ranking these three definitively, World God Only Knows has a little bit of a handicap because I read the manga when it was first coming out, and I watched the first season with Kat a couple of years ago. I rewatched it when I saw it was on Crunchyroll and decided I want to watch something. But it has a kind of special nostalgic place in my heart. And so, like I said, it would have a leg up on the competition. The World God Only Knows, aka my mad gaming skills are pulling all the baddies, aka House MD but for dating sims, aka what if harem but episodic, aka there's no freaking way I'll fall in love with a 3D girl unless, aka dealing with 3D girls is a breeze. This is a show, it's the only show of these three that has supernatural elements, by the way. If that is a deal breaker or something that excites you, let that change your opinion, sway your opinion. But the main character is a guy who only thinks about dating sims. He is really competent. Like, he aces every test that he has in school because he is under the impression that it's okay for him to play games in class so long as he also passes all of his tests. So he's one of those zany anime main characters who can do anything that he puts his mind to. But he only likes playing dating games. He ends up signing a contract with the devil. It's not phrased that way, but it basically is, where he has to capture runaway souls that are hiding in the hearts of women. And the way that he does this, the anime or the manga explicitly points out that there's other ways to do it, but his way is very effective. But the way that he does it is he treats these girls like they're a dating sim, and if he can conquer them, I don't like that word, but it is what it is. If he can get them to fall in love with him enough that they would kiss him, it will expel the escape soul, that's what they're called, out of their body, and then his partner, his buddy, Elsie, buddy's like the title of the position that she holds, but Elsie will be able to capture them, and there'll be one less loose soul on the loose. The first two seasons are very like arc by arc. You meet a new girl, and then Kaima has to figure out why, what is missing in their life. How can he get them to fall in love with him? And then he dates them, or he interacts with them, and then they kiss, and then the escaped soul is released. Importantly, the girls do not remember the quote-unquote conquest. So literally, you could watch almost any of these arcs separate from one another, and you wouldn't miss much. You might miss something like Elsie loves fire trucks. I don't know why. It's a very endearing trait, but if you missed the episode where she suddenly discovered fire trucks and then you watched a later episode, you might be like, why is she playing with fire trucks in the background? But in terms of like character progression or like lessons learned, I'd say that there isn't much in the first 2 seasons between the first 7 girls that he ends up, I guess dating would be the word for it, seducing. The 3rd season is where the series needed to have like a more direct plot. It needed a place where it could say, this is the final chapter. It's not just going to be 1,000 chapters of different girls, different dating sim archetypes, realized in this world. And so what it is discovered is that there are 6 goddesses hiding in the real world that for some reason happen to be in Kaima's town. Spoilers, I'm spoiling all of these series in case you hadn't realized that yet. But I think it's because there's a specific ritual site in the city, and I don't know if that is at all related to Kaima being the king of dating sims, or the god of dating sims. But yeah, so there's 6 goddesses, they're hiding out in this town, and they can only appear in the hearts of the girls that he has previously gotten to fall in love with him. And the trick to figuring out which one of them has a goddess in them, it is the girls that can that remember his conquest of them. So there's like an episode or 2 of him trying to figure out like where the goddesses are hiding. There's a couple of episodes of him redoing the conquest more or less, which gets tricky because these girls remember that they're in love with him, but they also see him going out of his way to date a bunch of other girls. And so it's a lot of tension, and it's a lot of convincing them that no, he really does love them and only them, and that leads to hijinks. And then it accumulates with a situation where there are 2 girls, best friends, who are in his class, and one of them has a goddess inside of her. And he's pretty sure it's Chihiro, which is one of the 2 girls. And he gets like 90% of the way to quote-unquote conquering her, of getting the kiss, sealing the deal. And he realizes that she doesn't have the goddess in her. She says something that like shows that she doesn't remember, or that she says like, oh, I've loved you since March. And he's like, wait, but I didn't conquer you until May. What is, oh no. So he has to switch targets and figure out how to get that to work. And it's kind of a disaster. So this ends up being his biggest challenge yet, because these 2 girls are best friends. He just started dating one and then kind of out of the blue dumped her more or less, and is now shifting his attention to Ayumi, who's the girl who actually has the 6th goddess in it. In the end, the day is saved, and all of the souls all of the loose souls, all 6,000 of them or 60,000 of them or whatever, are sent back to hell. And there's a rebellion happening in hell that gets kind of wrapped up pretty swiftly. One thing I will point out is that I didn't read any articles about the production of this anime, but it really feels like they weren't sure if they were going to get a 3rd season, because the 2nd season ends with playing the theme song from the 1st season, which is always something that a show does when it's like, look at the road we've traveled. It shows all 7 of the girls that he had dated at that point, he had kissed. And so it definitely felt like they weren't sure if they were going to get a 3rd season. And then when the 3rd season starts, if you watch all of the seasons back to back to back like I did, and you didn't know that there was an OVA that took place between seasons 2 and 3, there's just a random like, oh, by the way, I have dated other girls off screen. There have been other conquests. By the way, one of them was a literal ghost. And you're like, what? So there are some goddesses that show up that he goes, oh yeah, I remember how I seduced you the first time, that you, the viewer, will not be familiar with in the anime specifically. I had a vague recollection of some of them from the manga. Also, in a sense, it doesn't really matter like what their past history was, because it's a lot of kind of archetypes, if that makes sense, right? So there's the girl who's in the library, there's the standoffish girl who only talks through her doll, there's, so in a sense, you can kind of get the gist from it, but there's definitely a moment of like, wait, what? There's another buddy character, right? One of the people who work for Hell, who capture loose souls, who shows up, and Kaima will be like, oh yes, the last time we met, we were enemies. That's not in the anime at all. So if you watch these without being a reader of the manga, there will be moments in the 3rd season where it's kind of like, whoa, what is this development? But in the end, I still think that it's a pretty well put together show, and I think the information you need for each individual character is communicated thoroughly. I am not going to try and recap each individual conquest, but I will as a test, right? So something I've heard about shows with big ensemble casts and teams and all that stuff is how well can you tell each of the characters apart? How well can you remember them? And I know in like Team Fortress 2, the thing that Yahtzee of Semi-Rum Leonic likes to say is, can you tell their silhouettes apart? So as a kind of test of that, I want to try and go through the list of characters from all 3 seasons, specifically characters that had loose souls and or goddesses in them that kind of had to try and kiss. I did not look up any of these before doing this review, but I do, because of my autism, I know that there were 4 girls in the first season, there were 3 in the second, and I know that there are 6 goddesses in the third season. So let's see if I can do this. Ayumi is the track girl, and I know that she's first, and her thing is that if she has her hair tied up in a ribbon, that means that she's trying her best. I don't remember specifically. I think it was just Kaima believing in her that she could do her best. There is Kanon, who is a idol. Her song is a play off of the fact that her name sounds like cannon, like the thing that you fire in war and stuff like that. There's Shion, maybe? Shiori? She's the quiet library girl. And then, hang on, Chihiro's second season. Martial arts girl is second season. Oh, I think her name is Mio. I don't think I need to remember their names. I think it's more important that I can remember their kind of archetypes, maybe. That's going to count for a grade on this test. But she is a rich girl who is no longer rich, but refuses to act, like who refuses to carry around change, like yen in her pocket. She only wants to use like $10,000 bills, but she doesn't actually have $10,000 bills. She has one that's supposed to last the month. Those are the 4 girls from season 1. And out of them, best girl for me is library girl Shiori. The way that they do her, being nonverbal, the way that they do her inner thoughts, the way that they show her thinking before she speaks, they do like the little speech bubble with the ... but there's like 8 of them that show up on screen kind of like at once. I really like that. I like I don't know if it's exactly flirting, but Kaima will show up in the library, and the first time he shows up, she thinks that he's writing in a book. Like he's taken a library book and he started writing in it. And she gets mad at him, but then he's like, this is actually my notebook. It's blank. See, I'm just writing my class notes in it. So like the way he kind of gets her attention and the way they interact, I think is really cute. What do you call it? The kind of imagery of the end of her arc. She's locked herself in a library and she's got like this tower of books. And when it's finally time for the conquest to end, kind of reaches out to her and the books start falling. I think it's really well done imagery. In the second season, there's only 3. I think the last one is the teacher, which makes me raise an eyebrow, but what are you going to do, right? This show is meant to be tropey. And so it plays into the tropes. It is a fact that dating sims sometimes have the teacher be a character that you can interact with. So there's a teacher character, and then there's Chihiro, whose whole thing is that she seems to not really take an interest in anything. Like she seems to kind of flit from one hobby to another, one boy to another. She's fallen in love with like 6 different guys at this point throughout the school year and that sort of thing. And she eventually ends up creating a band, which is super cool. And then the third girl, it's a martial artist girl, and her thing, this is pretty cool. In the manga, the further you get into it, the more the loose souls start to have like a supernatural effect on their hosts. So the first couple of girls, like Ayumi and I think her name is Mio, they're just girls. But Kanon has like, she kind of like starts to turn invisible during her conquest. And the martial artist, her thing is that she thinks that she can't be girly. Wait, this sounds familiar. Where have I heard this before? But she thinks that she has to be she can't like sweet things, she can't like girly things, and she ends up manifesting both. She ends up having like the tough side that does martial arts, and she also has the girly side, and they can switch bodies, I think. I can't remember if they switch bodies or if one's just like a ghost that haunts them. But those are the three girls from the second season. And honestly, I don't know if I necessarily really like any of them a lot. Like, I think that most of the girls from the first season to me are more interesting, are quote unquote better girls than the girls from the second season. However, if I had to pick one, I think I might pick the martial artist because it is super cute the way that her cute side really likes the cat. And for moral reasons, I don't believe in choosing the teacher as best girl. Chihiro's kind of interesting. We'll talk about her in a second. Let me see if I can remember the 6 goddesses from the third season. Ayumi is one of them because she's the final goddess. Kanon is one. She's the first goddess to show up. Shiori, the library girl, is another goddess. A girl who was off-screen dating Kaima, one of the conquests that happened between season 2 and 3, is a astronomer. She's an upperclassman, I think, who is in the astronomy club, and she has the doll that I mentioned. I specifically remember that her goddess is Vulcan, I believe. Another goddess is Tenri, who is another character who was off camera between season 2 and season 3. She apparently is in the OVA, which is interesting. I did not know that existed until I looked up the series in order to determine when the anime episodes actually aired, because I knew they were older than 2025, obviously, but I didn't remember which year they came out in. But that leaves a 6th goddess, doesn't it? A 6th goddess. Oh, the 6th goddess is gender. It is a girl who, during her dating time with Kaima, they switched bodies. And so again, this is another off-camera character that you just meet in season 3. But when she shows up, Kaima's like, is it because we switched bodies or what? But basically, this girl wears more masculine outfits. I think she might wear suits. And she is very forward, and she flirts with Kaima. And Kaima's like, I don't know how to be the girl in a relationship. I've never been the one who's been conquered. And I love her confidence and her, it's not exactly flamboyancy, but she just has like a lot of energy for life. And so I think if I had to pick a best girl from that season, I think I would probably pick her. Shiori is still good. You don't really get a lot of time with the telescope girl. So yeah, I think it would go to her. That season also introduces, and again, this is a character who either was in the OVA or manga only up until season 3, but it's the third buddy of the bunch, and she's a, what's it called? A Garo girl. So she's got like the tan and whatnot. And she is the most adult woman looking of the 3. And she's kind of the most superficial of the 3. And she's like, I will help you, but only if I get paid for it, or only if there's something in it for me. And she has her human buddy is just a little... a self-centered boy, a rich, snobby boy. And if Kat was watching the series, he would absolutely be her favorite character. It's the Falgore from Zatch Bell. It's the, no, I can only think of the one. I can think of Falgore from Zatch Bell, but you know, that kind of character. So what do I like about this series? This is a silly thing. It's a very personal, small thing. But every time a new arc starts, there's a new girl that he is like, oh, I have to get her to try to kiss me. I have to get her to fall in love. There's a part where he doesn't quite know what he's going to do in order to get their affection, their attention. There's usually like a information gathering stage. Near the end, when he's finally kind of figured out what the key to solving it is, he says, I can see the ending, or I can finally see the ending. And I like that. It's a really small, silly thing, but I do really enjoy it. And there's even an episode in season 3 when he says, like, I can see the ending. It's been so long since I've said that. And one of the other characters is just like, what are you talking about? What does that even mean? It's cute. I like it. There's a scene where, because like I said, Kaima starts trying to date Chihiro in the third season again to try and get the goddess out, but then he realizes that she doesn't have the goddess. There's a scene that I remembered from the manga, because remember, I read the manga a long time ago when it was coming out week to week, and I didn't remember a lot, but there was one scene that I specifically remembered that was in the anime that I kind of think the manga did better, but he basically tries to seduce Chihiro, and then sort of breaks up with her, and it basically is a scene of Kaima on his own. I don't even think that Elsie is there, and he's crying because the relationship did mean something to him. He said hurtful things to Chihiro to purposefully drive her away, but we find out that it hurt Kaima to say it as well, which is important because throughout this entire series, he's constantly acted as if the real world doesn't affect him and that he only cares about the two-dimensional world. That is called into question in several places, just like Reneko's, obvious, I'm a lesbian, but I don't believe that I am. You can tell that Kaima does care about the world around him to some degree. But it was just nice to have a moment that kind of end caps that at the very end of the series. Once again, the humor is pretty good in this series. The kind of chemistry between the different characters is good. I like Shiori from the first season, before she has the goddess and he has to recapture her, quote unquote. But when she shows up again, she's trying to write a story, and in the story, there's a character who is clearly Kaima. But when he shows up again, he's like, oh, hey, Shiori, to try to get her interest, she writes something flattering about Kaima's character. But then she sees him with another girl, and she changes it to he died in a fire. But then Kaima takes the story and he goes, actually, he had put on his fireproof pants that morning and he was fine. And they go back and forth a couple of times like that. Not only do I like that way of showing the chemistry, but I also like the visuals that they use in the anime to go along with this story that she's writing. What else do I like? Elsie and Hakua. She's a second buddy who shows up later. She's like the older sister to Elsie. They're super cute. I like the way that they interact with Kaima. I like the way that they interact with each other. There's a joke where in the first season, Elsie needs to find a reason to live with Kaima. Remember, she's from hell or whatever. She doesn't have a place to actually live. So she forges a letter from Kaima's dad, who's working overseas, that says hello, wife, this is my illegitimate daughter. Please take care of her. And the mom, who used to be Yakuza, gets on her motorcycle and drives off to teach him a lesson. But then there's a later season, I think it's season 3, where Hakua shows up with a letter that says, hello, I'm your father's illegitimate daughter. And then Hakua says, or your husband's illegitimate daughter. And Hakua's like, no, I wouldn't actually do that. Who would be so stupid? Because Elsie is portrayed as someone who makes a lot of mistakes. She and you, from dealing with the Mikadono sisters, they're perfectly synchronized with one another. But yeah, I guess overall, I don't know, in a year, right, when I look back on all of these shows, which one am I going to remember the most, assuming that I don't rewatch them and that they don't get a second season? Watanare has already been confirmed to be getting a second season, but if I don't watch any more from any of these series, and I don't think about it for a year and I come back, which one am I going to remember the most? World God Only Knows is a very strong contender, because I read the manga and because I've watched the first season twice now. It also has supernatural elements that, in a sense, kind of separate it from mundane, real world kind of adjacent anime. But I don't know. I really do think that Yu's personality is going to help him stand out in my memory compared to Reneko, for example. I forgot to talk about World God Only Knows messages that it's kind of about. Overall, I'd say that it's a matter of living in the real world, and does the real world affect you, I guess. It's interesting because several times throughout this series, different characters, mostly adults, but also Elsie, will point out, don't you care about the real world? Doesn't the real world affect you? And Kaima will argue quite vehemently, and he'll come up with reasons why it's okay to be stuck in the 2D world. And I do think that the author was going for a thing just like Reneko, right? A character who is in denial about the truth of their heart. He secretly does care about all this around him, but he does a really consistent job of ignoring things happening around him. People will make fun of him for playing his games, and he does not give a shit. He does not pay attention. He does not care. Very rarely does his video game, being the god of dating sims, very rarely does it have negative impacts that he actually cares about. But at the end of the series, like I said, with the Chihiro moment, I do think that the show is going with the idea that you can't just live on dating sims alone. I think that the show does not come down as hard as a lot of other shows might, where the character at the end of the series has to like stop playing dating sims altogether. But I do think that there is the indication there that the people in your real life matter as well. One thing that I didn't quite understand, and I think this was just because it was they weren't sure if they were going to get a third season, but there's a couple of episodes that are about Kaima just like playing a dating sim. He just goes in his room and he plays a dating sim, and Elsie and the mom are like, should we do something about this? No, it's fine. It's okay. And one of them is about like a game that's glitched so that you can't get to the end, or like no one has ever gotten to the end. And one of them is about like the best game in the world, and he tries to decide what it would be like if he designed his own dating sim, and he can't decide which is most important, the story elements or the music or the setting or that kind of a thing. I think there are too many of those episodes, and I don't feel like they add anything to Kaima's character after the first one. Having one is fine. Having an entire episode about how much he loves games or how much he cares about the girls in the games, that's kind of another thing that keeps coming up, is like he deeply cares about the girls in these games and says things like, even if a girl's in a crappy game, she didn't choose that. So there's a lot of anthropomorph, you know what I'm saying. And I think that shows a certain level of care in him, but it also is a little misplaced because it's a video game, and like I get it, right? You don't want to hold people accountable for situations that maybe are outside of their control. There's some real world analogies you can make with that, but the fact that it's a dating game also kind of makes it a little different. I think that's going to do it for my main review and overview of these three shows, but there is a segment that I have to cover. I mentioned it during the Watanare section. Which of these three shows, 5 seasons, had the best opening? Now, unfortunately, Mikadono Sisters, as much as I love your main character, as much as I love the designs of 2 of your main 3 characters, unfortunately, I don't remember a single thing about your opening, so I think that disqualifies you from having the best opening. World God Only Knows, your second season opening? I don't remember. The second season opening was the one that I skipped the most. I think, in fact, it's the only one that I skipped. I think I listened to the first and third openings every single episode. Special shout out, it's not an opening, but the World God Only Knows Season 1 closing is also quite good. I really like that. But of the 3, of Season 1 World God Only Knows, Season 3 World God Only Knows, and Watanare, so let me use the proper title of these songs. So, God Only Knows is the first opening of World God Only Knows, and then Secrets of the Goddess is the third. I think it's technically God Only Knows, Secrets of the Goddess, whatever. Secrets of the Goddess is the third season opening. And then Murray Murray Evolution is the opening for Watanare. Now, I think the first and third openings of World God Only Know are, well, the first one is a perfect encapsulation. It feels like a video game. It starts with like loading kind of music, and the music builds, and it just overall feels very much like it is an anime about a video game, and in many ways it basically is. So I think that is a strong contender for best opening. Secrets of the Goddess is an interesting one, because I think that it might not quite be as strong as God Only Knows. However, there's one specific line that grabs my heart and grabs my face and pulls me in. So, as I said, Kaima spends a lot of time talking about how great games are and how the real world is crap and that nobody should care about it. Or that he doesn't care about it, I suppose. There's a specific line, and it's, I know it's not a game anymore. And out of all, like, that single line is the most powerful line in all of World God Only Knows, specifically because in the first 2 seasons, there is not much consequence of the girls having loose souls in them. There's this kind of overall threat that like the souls will grow more powerful and maybe it'll be new hell on earth, but I don't think we get a single moment where it looks like that's going to happen. The worst failure is that Kaima might have to spend more time trying to quote unquote conquer a girl, which takes time away from his video game. So very low stakes. 3rd season introduces the goddesses. It introduces this like faction in hell that's trying to like take over, and they are literally going to attack and kill the goddesses and the hosts, the host bodies, which means attacking characters that we know and real girls, women who will die. And there's a moment when Canon gets stabbed, and there's a bunch of characters who gather around to try to figure out what to do, and Kaima says, oh, it's obvious, I will just go conquer the other 5 goddesses, and then they can combine their power and they can heal Apollo / Canon. And someone says, like, you need to take this seriously. And he says, I know it's serious because Canon is hurt. She got hurt because because this is happening because of the situation. The only way to fix it is for me to do my business. And so that line, I know it's not a game anymore, it is literally what's happening, but it's also about Kaima growing into the fact that, like, this isn't just a kind of play thing. This isn't just him, like, can I use dating sim logic to get the tracker girl to kiss me? It's people could actually get hurt if I don't take this seriously. So that one line almost makes me want to say that it is the better of the 2 World God Only Knows openings, but I honestly can't pick. Don't Sophie's Choice me for the 1st and 3rd seasons openings of the World God Only Knows. But if you know anything about Watanare, if you were watching it week to week, or if you were looking in the comments, you know that it was called Murray Murray Mondays. The show aired on Mondays on the YouTube channel, and its opening was Murray Murray Evolution. And that opening is such a bop, it has to be the best opening of these 5. It is incredible. It might be one of the main reasons why I kept coming back to the show at the beginning before it really got traction and kind of took off and I knew the characters a little bit better. It is fantastic. Please listen to it. And as you heard me allude to in the Watanare section where I was reviewing it, that's one of the things I wanted to shout out as being particularly good, but I couldn't because I needed to save it for the end when I was talking about all the openings. So that is the reviews. All 3 of the reviews. If you were looking for me to make a recommendation, I would again say that they're all pretty good, but it depends on what you want. If you're a fan of Yuri, if you want kind of, I guess, more complicated relationships, then I would say that what you're looking for is I'll Never Be Your Lover Unless, aka Watanare. I would say that if you're looking for something kind of like light and fluffy that still has kind of character development and like a relationship development, then Mikadono is where you want to go because that's a long-running series where, you know, relationships are going to ebb and flow. There's going to be a moment when one of them falls in love with you. There's going to be a moment when maybe you messes up and it causes a rift. Or like one of them will have to move or something like that, and that will raise the stakes for a second. World God Only Knows is good. I think it's funny, but it is also fairly kind of static. Like I said earlier, Kaima doesn't really learn lessons from one arc to another. It's only like in sudden moments he'll show kind of like spurts of major character development. So if you don't mind episodic, and again, I don't think this is true of anyone who watches anime, but like if you don't like supernatural stuff, World God Only Knows wouldn't be good for you. But if you prefer stories that have, soul swapping and hell minions and stuff like that, then definitely check out World God Only Knows. Overall, I would say that all 3 of these shows are good. If any of them got another season, World God Only Knows very unlikely to get another season, but if any of them got another season, I would probably check them out. And that has been your final thought. outro goes here. Thanks for listening, everyone, and don't forget, it's never too late to try to express your feelings to someone who's important to you.
Well, friends, all journeys must end. And now today's journey has finished, and we must bid you goodbye. We hope you have a good day, we hope you are kind to those around you, and we'll see you again. If you want to contact the show, you can do so at kingofthewhatpod@gmail.com. You can leave a comment on our YouTube channel or rate us on your podcatcher of choice.